So it's a new year and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? How am I going to build something for myself? I'm dying to be my own boss or see if I can turn this business idea that I've been kicking around into a reality, but I don't know how to make it happen. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and let me tell you how. The best time to start your new business? Right now. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates, no coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff like growing your business. What happens if you don't act now? Will you regret it? What if someone beats you to the idea? Don't kick yourself when you hear this again in a year because you didn't do anything now. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/theathletic, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/theathletic to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/theathletic. With 132 million users and an unrivaled selection of sports trading cards and memorabilia, eBay is the home of collectibles. Premium trading card singles, live card breaks, unique game-used memorabilia, all the epic finds you need are right here on eBay. Collect with confidence by downloading the eBay app on the App Store or by going straight to ebay.com/theathletic. That's ebay.com/theathletic. Start building your collection today.
Exclusively on ESPN Plus, UFC 311, Saturday. You're gonna get it! Reigning lightweight champion and the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, Islam Makhachev, defends his title in a rematch against Arman Tsarukyan. And reigning bantamweight champion, Rob Dvalishvili, defends his title against undefeated Umar Nurmagomedov. UFC 311, Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Buy it on ESPNplus.com/PPV.
The Athletic.
Two MotoGP launches down, 7 to go, 8 if you include the MotoGP event. We will touch on the opening Trackhouse Aprilia one later, but our bigger ticket item today is the Aprilia launch, where Simon is on location right now, where Jorge Martin, our MotoGP champion, revealed that he will be running the #1 plate this season. Before we go into the actual more important stuff, Simon, I think we all knew that Martin would run the #1 plate. It wasn't really a huge shock to anyone, but there's a big part of me that appreciated him pretending like he might not anyway. You know, it's like seeing your football club unveil a player officially, even when everybody's already reported a million times that they've joined, you know, that kind of thing.
He admitted at the lunch today that he made the decision that he would run the #1 plate the year after he won the MotoGP championship when he was still a Moto3 rider. So this is not something that has come as a surprise to anyone at all. But yeah, exactly like you say, it was still nice to see. And the Aprilia team kind of played the game right up to the point where they still had the 89 branding until the covers come off the bike. And, you know, they did a good job of making it a bit suspenseful, which is nice. I like it. So it's a fun way to do it. And, I mean, there's been a lot of talk over the last months about whether or not he'd take the #1 plate from Ducati to Aprilia, because, you know, it was going to be a massive FU to the team that hadn't given him a factory seat for next season. But today didn't feel like any of that. Today felt like a rider that was very proud to have won a world championship and was celebrating it regardless of what machine took him to it, which is nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's very much the Jorge Martin way of looking at it is, you know, I've got this one and that's the only one I can guarantee because I already have it. So I have to celebrate it to the full. I think it's a very healthy way to look at it, even when you don't consider all the, you know, Aprilia, Ducati, who this #1 truly belongs to, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff that comes with it. This is, you know, let's try to separate ourselves from the fact that Aprilia is just good at launches. Right, because that's the thing that I think matters to us more than to most people. We watch so many motorsport launches that we start to rank them in our heads. We start to feel quite good about the good ones, quite bad about the bad ones. Whereas, you know, normal people just want to see bikes. It's a new bike, congratulations, off you go. But this one, there's something that felt a little bit different about it. I don't know if you felt it on location as much as I felt it from a distance. There's it's more optimistic even. There's like a real positivity around it. I think isn't just normal launch corporate positivity, but there's something extra, isn't it? There's a real high.
The last few seasons, the Aprilia team launch has been pulling off the covers of the bike in the paddock, at Lusail, at Portimao, wherever the pre-season testing ended. Today, I'm sitting here in the Sky Sports Italia studio, where they do their MotoGP shows from. It's very fancy. It's, kind of the hub of Italian media broadcasting for motorsports. It felt like a very polished, very factory team presentation from a squad that are taking themselves more seriously than they've ever taken themselves before. It felt like the team launch for a team that want to win a championship, not a team that are competing in the championship, which felt a little bit like the other day. Whenever they're pulling the covers off the bike in pit lane, that's the sort of team launch you expect from a satellite team or a CRT era MotoGP team. It's like they'd never made the switch from the Gresini era whenever they were still open class bikes. But today felt like the presentation of a team that's gone into the season to win a championship. It felt really different. It felt more, more engaged. It felt like this is them saying, right, we're here to be serious now. We've got a number one on our bike. We're going to fight for a championship. Maybe not this year. We'll come to that in a minute. But we're going to fight for a championship. We are a factory team that's here to fight for this. And it's cool. It's really good to see, especially as someone that's been quite, close with Aprilia. I've spent a lot of time focusing on Aprilia over the course of the time I've been in MotoGP, mainly because they had a succession of British riders when I started. But, watching them transform from that weird Gresini hybrid CRT bike team to this, today felt like, the culmination of a project that comes well deserved.
Yeah, and it's not just the media side of it, obviously. It's not just reflected in the media side. I think they made a point to mention multiple times that this is the first time that the 2025 prototype was ready well in advance, because normally Aprilia, and this hasn't hurt it so much in the early parts of the season, but it's certainly, it's just not how it's done. Normally Aprilia would bring the bike that it has for the year at the very start of the year, or even maybe sometimes not even for the start of preseason testing. I might be making that up, but certainly it was never early.
I remember one year where they brought two current spec engines and only two to the whole of the Sepang preseason shakedown. And they brought an engine builder to strip and rebuild the engine in between days off in what was normally the rider's office, because they only had two of them.
Yeah. No, and it also added to the charm in a little bit. These sort of, mad scientists working on not a shoestring budget, but sort of not like other MotoGP factories work. It's just everything goes on the wall, whatever sticks, and we try lots of things, and then another factory will take those things and make them more refined and make a better bike and win the championship. And that era of Aprilia, maybe it feels like, has ended today. However, I mean, that's all well and good, and it's very positive launch. Are we expecting them to win in 2025? Are they expecting them to win in 2025? It does not sound that way, does it?
So to go back a step first, in terms of the level of preparation that's going into this season, it's not like anything we've ever seen from them before. Like you said, that we would normally struggle to see two current spec bikes at preseason testing. Whenever we go to Sepang in 2 weeks' time, they're going to have 10. They're going to have 10 2025 bikes, two each for the factory riders, two each for the Trackhouse satellite riders, and two each for Lorenzo Savadori. By far the biggest material commitment Aprilia have ever made. But it feels from everything they said today, it especially feels from what Jorge Martin said, that this is the start of a new era project whose end goal is to fight for the 2026 MotoGP Championship. Part of that is because they're expecting that it will take a bit of time for Bezzecchi and Martin to adapt to the bike. That we've seen that many, many times. That doesn't happen overnight for anyone. So there's going to be a bit of a slow start to the season, you would predict, because of that. But then on top of that as well, the bike's not quite at the level that Ducati is at. I've said it for a long time in the podcast that I think 2024 was peak Ducati, that was the top of their limits. And it's going to naturally decline as others get more competitive, as they lose some of their advantages, as the others learn to use the new rear tyre with this machine, etc., etc. So there's going to be a bit of a gradual decline, which means Aprilia, who have seen that, are looking at next year, are looking at starting next season with the strongest possible package. I think, if there's anything we can take away from the whole 10, 20, 25 bikes commitment, it's that we should probably also expect the GP20 or the RSGP 25 to become a bit like the Yamaha M1 of late, where there is very little difference between this bike and the next bike, the 26 bike, because I think we're going to see them able to do a bit more in terms of gradual improvement over the course of the season, now that all the pressure's off on building bikes mid-year and whatever. Having that strong base to start from means that the year should progress at a much more linear rate than the steps from the past. So everything is there to really focus on a 26 title effort. And I think credit to Massimo Rivola, he's almost acknowledged that they have to concede this year to be strong enough next year to have one last crack at a championship before the rules change and before everything becomes a bit of an unknown again.
And before, all the contracts go up for renewal. So,
of course,
all the goodwill that you've banked right now and all the situational, all the situation that you've benefited from, to sign Martin, Aprilia earned it, but in an ideal world,
Jorge Martin because Ducati pissed him off.
Yes.
That's the reality of it.
Yes.
That is the reality of it. It would have been so much easier for everybody involved for him to still be on a Ducati of some color scheme next year.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened, and as a result, he was on the market and he was angry whenever they wanted to sign someone, and Aleix Espargaro was at this team to kind of coax him into the role as his brother, best mate, friend, confidant, manager, whatever.
Dad.
Yeah, practically.
Yeah.
So he was in this position to make it all happen. It felt like not like a one-off, because that's unfair on Aprilia, but it felt like all of the planets aligned to let them sign him.
Yes.
And now they have to use this year to show him that he made the right choice in signing for them.
Absolutely. But it's also, I think it is also not a situation. Jorge Martin is a great champion, but it can be overstated the amount of upgrade they got in him over Aleix Espargaro and Maverick Viñales, as if those were two scrubs who could barely qualify the bike. Anyway, we'll get to the riders in a second. I think what's important, I don't know, but what I want to mention, Fabiano Sterlachini speaking to the media a lot now. He is the new Aprilia tech manager. He's replaced Romano Albesiano, who is Honda's big signing. Albesiano, obviously, a driver of much of what made this Aprilia, what made the RSGP a formidable, respected bike, a winning bike, not a title contending bike so much, but a winning bike. I can't compare their technical bossability. That's not, you wouldn't go to me for that. What I can say is I'm consistently impressed by Fabiano Sterlachini, the way he has been speaking to us. He seems to coming into it the right way and with very precise and trying to make it more, I can't find the word, but I think you know what I mean, more gradual, more precise in a way.
Today was kind of our first day speaking to him at length, and the thing that impressed me the most today is he's quite honest. Technical bosses in MotoGP more than anyone else tend to be quite guarded, and it's not technical bosses that leak things to you, it's rider managers, it's the other side of the garage or the management structure that leak things to journalists. But he's quite upfront and honest. He said things today about how he'd kind of identified strengths and weaknesses of the Aprilia when he was a competitor to Aprilia at KTM and at Ducati prior to that, and how he came into the garage and saw the data and was pleasantly surprised that he was wrong on some of those things, and that he's had to kind of reassess his opinion of the bike, and just real there was no bullshit from him today. There was no, we're going to rebuild the world, this bike's this bike's that. It just felt like a fairly honest assessment of where the whole project is, and a pretty good take from a guy who just comes across as a steady pair of hands. As someone that's, I'm not saying that he's not going to be a bit of a risk taker if it comes to pushing out the boat on some things. We've always seen Aprilia being a bit of a risk taker in some things they've done technically. You know, the first people to run the ground effect fairing, the first person to use like the Christmas tree pitot tube arrangement to test aero during tests. Yeah. They've always been running the bike without wings in Phillip Island this year. They've always been the ones that have been a bit experimental to an extent, and I don't think that's going to change. But like, he's just an impressive character. He's just someone that you think, this team was bonded to Romano Bezzecchi after the amount of time he'd spent there, and it would have been very easy to have ended up looking a bit lost after losing him, but they've not done that. They've replaced him with someone that's, like I said, steady pair of hands.
I like the answer about the starts, specifically, that it's at 60% now, it's going to be at 80% starting the season, and then it's going to take a few races to take it to 100%. That's a very clear, precise goal, instead of like hand-waving it away as, oh, that's just an Aprilia thing that, we have to live with for now, or it's just, it's give and take. Every bike has strengths and weaknesses. No, this we have to sort. This we have to work around, and this is the time frame I am putting on the table right now to do it. And again, none of that is shade on Romano Bezzecchi, who has proven himself enough. Romano Bezzecchi does not need us to be singing his praises on a podcast. He's got the Honda contract, and no problem there.
So it's a new year and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? How am I going to build something for myself? I'm dying to be my own boss, or see if I can turn this business idea that I've been kicking around into a reality, but I don't know how to make it happen. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and let me tell you how. The best time to start your new business? Right now. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates, no coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff like growing your business. What happens if you don't act now? Will you regret it? What if someone beats you to the idea? Don't kick yourself when you hear this again in a year because you didn't do anything now. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/theathletic, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/theathletic to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/theathletic. You saw that play when your QB dropped back, looked off the safety, and threw a dime deep for the go-ahead touchdown. That's not just haul-worthy, that's wall-worthy, and you can own a piece of it when you shop the unrivaled selection of trading cards and memorabilia on eBay, the home of collectibles since 1995. Huddle up with 132 million users around the world to find that rookie patch auto you can't find anywhere else. Premium trading card singles, live card breaks, unique game-used memorabilia, all the epic finds you need are right here on eBay. Plus, with eBay Authenticity Guarantee for trading cards, you know that what you buy is the real deal. Collect with confidence by downloading the eBay app on the App Store or by going straight to ebay.com/theathletic. That's right, your collecting journey kicks off right here, right now at ebay.com/theathletic. Come through and collect with us today.
Will, talk to me.
ABC Tuesday.
They took his daughter. She's coming home alive.
Will Trent, the series critics are calling powerful must-see TV, continues to thrill.
Shouldn't we strategize before we go in there?
If we screw up this case, a cop killer walks free.
With the riveting conclusion to a 2-part season premiere.
GBI!
Help me!
Get down!
Will Trent, all new Tuesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Now, before we go into the writers, firstly, I mean, I'm hosting today. Matt Beer is unavailable. Launches come thick and fast. I have not disappeared him. He's totally fine and cool. Everything is okay. I promise. I realize the more I speak about this, the more suspicious I make it sound. But no, it's totally fine. And you will notice his absence right now very much in how I try to do this Patreon plug that I'm going to be really bad at. But yeah, over on the Races Patreon, I've got a lot of MotoGP stuff coming up as the season kicks in. Not just the 2025 season, but for us, the 2015 season. The first episode of that comes out on the 22nd of January, I believe. And it'll be the Qatar opener for 2015.
Matt's also been on the Patreon page teasing a listeners' questions podcast episode with one of the more interesting characters in the MotoGP paddock that we've come up with. Without giving away too much, but you're going to have to be in the Patreon members club to find out who it is and to find out whether or not you can ask a question.
Well, I mean, they can ask a question. That's the whole point of it.
Well, I mean, they can if they're in there. Yeah, okay, fair point.
Find out. You made it sound like a raffle.
We're bad at plugging things when Matt's not here, aren't we?
I wonder if they can edit this magically with AI into something halfway decent, but I presume technology capability is not there yet. But yeah, also all of our YouTube videos are going to be there ad-free now, and right now that includes a yet unreleased video on David Alonso, which we really, really enjoyed making. Please do me a favor, do not try to track those videos gradually by the amount of hair that I have on my head, because that's not fair, especially to me. But anyway, now let's go into the riders. The big ticket item, the two guys in new colors, one of them a champion, the other a potential champion at some point down the line. Let's start with Jorge Martin. I think today further reinforced my hypothesis that is Aprilia lucky that he won the championship, because there's a level of relief and calm that I do not believe will have been there if there was a heartbreak at the end of 2024.
He's a different character. He's so much more mature than he was 12 months ago. I don't think it's entirely because he won the championship. I think it's partly because of the way he fought for the championship. But at the same time, he admitted that 12 months ago he had absolutely no interest in riding a MotoGP bike.
Yeah.
He straight up said that he was over it. He was done with it. And Aprilia, for where the project is right now and for all the praise we've just poured on it, it wouldn't have been very fair on them if they'd got that version of Jorge Martin.
I agree.
And if he'd lost the championship, that very easily could have happened.
I agree.
They could have got someone who wasn't willing to come into this and be this influence that he wants to be. He sounds today like someone who, we joked about Aleix earlier in their relationship, but he sounds like someone that wants to take over that captain role that Aleix has made his own. He and both Stellicini and Rivola were quite quick to kind of say that that he's been really impressive as a team leader already. He is a leader. It's great for them. That combination of this guy, this mature guy, on this package, it's strong. It's stronger. It's much stronger than it was whenever they announced that they'd signed him.
Yeah.
That's how it feels. It feels like already this is a better deal than the one that they got.
Yeah, and it's and in doing that better deal, they didn't contribute necessarily, unless you count Aleix not fighting him too hard in the Solidarity Grand Prix as contribution.
No, exactly. Like this is not Aprilia's doing to end up here, but nonetheless they've done very well out of it.
Yeah, I agree, and it's again, we've touched upon this on all the postseason review stuff, but it's just remembering. I don't remember Valentino Rossi Ducati so much. Wasn't really doing MotoGP at that point, but certainly Johan Zarco KTM, a guy who comes in there and at the wrong moment, basically. And when you realize that somebody's at the wrong moment, I'm not sure. Zarco didn't have the sort of disillusionment that Martin risked, because it was entirely possible that Martin, falls off on Sunday in the Solidarity Grand Prix, Pecco Bagnaia wins. How do you, even if you've changed completely, it would take absolute magic from the team boss to fix that. And Aprilia got a really uplifted Martin, a Martin who seems to have made peace with the fact that, not going to win many races this season potentially. That's totally fine. Let's ask him after Thailand, I guess, because that sort of thing never lasts. A year's very long. But I think this is a better combination than it maybe even felt at the time. And even if they're secondary to Ducati this season, an added bonus is also that at least that goal of being second to Ducati, that's wide open in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be. There's been a change in the dynamic in MotoGP. There's maybe less of a threat from Austria, and they're in a position to exploit that. They're in a position to make the most out of it. I think that they would have been in that position had KTM announced that they'd found an extra $4 billion down the back of the sofa rather than the debt that they were in, because that's the vibe that came out of this camp today. That's this, I can't stress it enough. It felt different today. It felt different atmosphere. And obviously, yes, we're sitting in a studio in Milan in January. It's a long way away even from the start of the MotoGP season. And everything will change again before we put bikes on track on the 1st of March for the first sprint race. But, it's been so close for Aprilia the past few years. They have kind of always messed it up at some point in the season. And it sounds like they've realised that, they've learned from that, they've done a lot of legwork. They've signed a superstar, and they've put all the pieces together in a much more methodical, meticulous way than they have in past years. And you've got to think that there's going to be benefits come from that, especially aided by the position that others have found themselves in.
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, we don't know. Maybe the KTM will. It's not like the building of those bikes was definitively affected by the crisis. So we'll wait and see on that on that front. Marco Bezzecchi we've not talked about at all, which is not necessarily fair to him, and it's in large part of a consequence of not having the number one, having the 72, which is not that remarkable to us, and of having the season that he had in 2024. Marco is in an interesting situation because he's a rider who comes into this season despite having a plum new works contract with a huge question mark, and we have to address it. And you've asked him about it, haven't you, specifically? Or
yeah, I mean the 2024 season was a disaster for every Ducati GP23 rider in a season-old bike with Michelin's rear tire, with the exception of different level talent Marc Marquez. Everyone else struggled at some point in the year. Kind of semi-consistently, everyone else. But
somebody, Marco, struggled more relative to his
previous season. It was much worse. I mean, arguably, it was a disaster. It was a complete disaster. He doesn't want to put the whole blame for that in the new rear tire, and I think that's fair because there was obviously something else missing that made him struggle more than everyone else. Yeah. But I also think that a part of his approach to MotoGP, to riding, is that he's one of those riders who's very confidence-based. And if a chink, once a crack forms, it expands. I think maybe that, like, his season snowballed into a disaster rather than starting out as one. And So I think he's probably identified where things went wrong after he discovered that the new rear tire meant he was going to have a more difficult season. I think that Aprilia have proven that they're very, very good at being the armour and the shoulders. Let's turn a rider who has a bit of a weakness in that area into something stronger. They turned, I'm going to blow up this Yamaha Maverick Vinales into a MotoGP race winner again. They're good at that. Massimo Rivola is a good people manager. So he's always felt like he's in a position to take the best out of Bezzecchi since they announced they'd signed him. He's never been too distraught by Bezzecchi's performances through the end of 2024 after they'd signed him, because he always thought they'd be able to find a way back from him. Yeah. And, for Marco's, from his own perspective, when I asked him about it, when we talked about it, he said that, he hasn't had enough time in the bike yet to know whether or not this is fixed. Whether or not a different bike that's more adapted to the new tire is going to make this better. And it's also worth noting that they didn't have a huge amount of time in the 2025 bike in Barcelona. They rode, they kind of alternated between it and the 24 bike that wasn't perfected for this tire at that. So there's a bit of time still to come at testing before he gets a bit of a vibe for where this is going. But, again, kind of quietly confident, bit more mature, bit more organised in terms of how he puts together what he's doing. And you have to think that if the issue was a tyre that didn't work with a bike and then a snowballing disaster of a season off the back of it, that he's in a position to be back this year fighting for, not fighting for a championship, not in an Aprilia, and not after switching from a Ducati to an Aprilia, but at the very least fighting for race wins at certain points in the season as the year progresses.
You probably don't see so much a scenario in which he tucks away Martin this season, so takes care of him.
I don't think so. I see Martin as being someone that can start the season challenging for podiums.
Right.
Not finishing on the podium, but challenging for podiums on a bit more consistent basis, Whereas Bezzecchi is in a position where if India was still in the calendar at that track that he loved in September, you'd expect him to win it.
Yeah.
That kind of that timeline, but then maybe be top 10 the few weeks after. I think he's always been a bit more of a hot and cold rider than the current Martin anyway, and I think Martin will absolutely end up the top of the two in the championship standings in terms of consistency. He'll rack up points on a more consistent basis, but would I be surprised if Martin was the top Aprilia in the standings, but Bezzecchi had more race wins at the end of the season? Maybe wouldn't shock me that much.
You'll see where I'm going with this. You've spoken to Aprilia higher-ups, I think specifically, about whether there's been a conscious move away from a hot and cold Aprilia, not in terms of the temperature, but in terms of, a bike with a more versatile profile, a bike that doesn't dominate at tracks where it used to, but doesn't, what word am I going to use, doesn't suck at tracks where it used to. So is that's something that maybe a little hampers Bezzecchi in 25? Because the tracks that Aprilia used to be really good at, not a lot of grip. Marco Bezzecchi likes not a lot of grip.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it would be good for him if Aprilia rediscovered some of that edge that it had in some of those venues.
I mean, right now he's got to be looking at his best chance of a strong result early in the season coming in Argentina as a low grip track where Aprilia goes well and Bezzecchi goes well.
Which is happening?
Which is sounding more and more like it's going to happen. Yeah.
Okay, right.
I heard a little bird told me this weekend that the Michelin have shipped tyres already.
Right.
Which is more promising than the position we were in 12 months ago. So I don't think they've consciously worked harder to make this bike less hot and cold.
Right.
I think it's kind of come as a natural thing as the bike has got a bit more consistent and a bit better. There is obviously this issue that remains where once we go to flyaways, the bike basically falls apart into a million pieces and all those pieces catch fire. Rivola's main takeaway from that when I asked him about it was, well, at least we're starting at one of those races to get it over and done with early with the season starting in Thailand this year. So it's almost like, if we were in one of those championships where you could exclude one race result from your season, they just do Thailand now, because it fixes up so many of the issues we've just talked about. But that's not how it works. But they've obviously done a lot of work around things like ergonomics to try and make the bike a bit better on the hot races. It's working better at some of the circuits that it shouldn't have worked better. I mean, how many times last season did Aleix deliver a decent result at a circuit that we didn't expect it at, and then be nowhere somewhere else that he should have been quick? That was, he shouldn't have been winning races.
Well, on
that bike, really. It was an odd season for them. I don't know whether or not that means that things have changed, or whether or not the bike is a bit more consistent. But it's like the missing puzzle piece of being a championship contender, isn't it? And I remember having this conversation with Rivola. We did an interview in pre-season testing, maybe even pre-COVID. And I remember him telling me, step one was at that point they had a bike that was quick at certain circuits.
Yeah.
But it wasn't winning races at them. And I remember him telling me at that point, the goal was to start winning races at those circuits. And all the circuits that he listed, I think they've won a race at since. It was your Argentinas, it was your Silverstones, it was your, all the places where that bike goes well. And then the next step in the project was to kind of start being on the podium everywhere else. And it's kind of, they've lost that edge. They're now kind of potentially a podium contender at every race without necessarily being a winner at every race that you automatically assume. So it's balancing, and it's got to be easier to turn a bike that can podium at every race into a bike that can fight for a championship, rather than turn a bike that can win at 4 races into a bike that can podium at every race.
Yep, because that's the exact thing that happened to Ducati, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies, to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
And now let's go back to launch number 1. Before Aprilia unveiled its bike, Trackhouse unveiled Aprilia's bike. You know what? I'm never sure what spec of bike takes part in those launches or whatever. I can't imagine it would have been the 2025 Aprilia for Trackhouse. No real point to fly that to, what was it, North Carolina? Charlotte?
Yeah,
right?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, I get
the home of NASCAR.
The home of NASCAR. Yeah, exactly. Trackhouse's NASCAR place.
We know that it wasn't a 2025 Aprilia because they basically stickered over the previous livery with their new livery. So it's like very obviously we know what bike it was, and I think it was actually a 23 spec bike that they have on display in the workshop with the old livery on it. Shout out
to our design man Oliver Card for noticing that. Shout out to Simon for remembering what bike is on display, keeping track of that sort of thing. I would have had no chance. It was kind of an incomplete launch, wasn't it? It felt a little like we're still not there in terms of what Trackhouse is supposed to be for MotoGP. And I say that as somebody who's you really quite liked the livery, for instance. I think the corporate livery looks quite good, but the fact that it was largely devoid of sponsors, apart from the Gulf Oil sticker, and the fact that team figures were pretty openly talking about it being basically a temporary rivalry until more of the sponsorship things can be hashed out, that sort of feels like a little bit of stopgap. But it feels like we've not started yet necessarily. And I come at that not so much from the on-track perspective, but off-track. On-track, it's a little different, but I think you know what I mean.
It was, as a launch event goes, wasn't great. It was a pre-recorded video, no journalists in attendance. The bike looks utterly devoid of sponsorship, which is essentially, I mean, it's in a worse position than it was 12 months ago because it's quite funny. The most prominent sponsorship branding on the factory Aprilia today is Stella Garda, the Italian dairy manufacturer who were a Trackhouse sponsor last year. They've lost them. They've also lost GoPro, which I think was a bit of a favour from Dorna, sending GoPro money that way. But there was literally one quite small sponsor sticker on the bike, and then every other logo on the machine is a technical partner. They have one average-sized sponsor. That's not how you run a MotoGP team. It's not how you afford to run a MotoGP team. We essentially have a MotoGP team right now that is being funded by the generosity and goodwill of Justin Marks, the team principal. And that is in no way sustainable. That's just, it asks questions. It asks serious questions about where this project is going. And to make it even worse, then whenever the team did video call media scrums with the main characters, the main players, Justin Marks didn't arrive to answer any of those questions. So you have to wonder where this team is going. And I know we're media who are talking about how the media of their launch were planned out, but when you're the team who by far leads the MotoGP standings in technical problems on track, you want to at least look slick in one part of your presentation, one part of what you do. You don't want to look like, this is really mean, this is going to sound harsh, you don't want to look like a club racing team.
Okay.
Whenever you're having consistent problems, you want to look like the most bells and whistles MotoGP team in the world. You want to look good, and they don't look good at the minute. That's the imagery from the launch, the pictures that we were sent from the launch. And I know it's such a small detail in the grand scheme of things. It really is. But whenever you don't bother bringing a professional photographer to shoot your bike launch pictures, you have to think, if they can't afford that, what else have they not been able to fund? What else is going on inside the team that is, because of this, and which of these, on-track mechanical problems and everything, what is stemming from the same root cause? And then, I think, obviously I sound like I'm having a complete whinge at them, and if you work for the team, I am really sorry, because it sounds mean, and it is. But the problem is, we expected so much more from Trackhouse. They came into MotoGP as the disruptors in NASCAR, the guys that had rocked up in NASCAR, immediately made a huge impact by doing cool shit. And they are doing nothing cool in MotoGP right now. There are individual elements of what they do that is really good. But the whole package, the whole presentation, the picture they're selling to the world is not something that is going to get the American audience or the NASCAR audience to come and love MotoGP the way that we thought Trackhouse's presence would.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of what for my end is just I don't want to say not ready, but so much as it's not what you would ideally have it be yet, and it's hard to pinpoint why without trying to go into financial talk and stuff like that. What we can say is that I presume Marks has been busy this week with Daytona 24 Hours prep. They're running a pretty serious crew in that with some really impressive drivers, but obviously I would also argue the MotoGP season launch is quite an important event. We're in an unfortunate world of double speak where I hate launches. I don't like them at all. I think it would be cool if the launches were this is the day that we're dropping the bike. This is a 2-minute video at the end of which you're seeing the bike, and then goodbye. I know that's not how the modern world works. I know the modern world has to have a lot of, corporate chat, etc., sponsors, senior figures, some CEO of some crypto sponsor or something, all the stuff that we cannot stand. And the Trackhouse launch, I got to give him that. The bike was right there immediately. The colors were right there. That's also presumably partly because there's not a lot of corporate sponsors to invite.
They were going to put the CEO of the company sponsor, though.
Yeah,
but they did, just to Marks.
I definitely, I can't complain about that, even though I also recognize the point that it is a signifier that you send out there. All the bells and whistles stuff it's outward marketing in a way also, even if sometimes it results in the wasting of 30 minutes or an hour of your life.
Look at it this way, right? Obviously, you can do a launch like Aprilia did today, and also it's hard to justify doing a launch like that when you don't have a load of corporate sponsors to keep happy.
Yes.
But on the flip side of the coin, would you be enticed to be a corporate sponsor of Trackhouse having seen the state of that presentation? Because it didn't sell the glamour of MotoGP to me. So someone pointed out, quite funny, someone pointed out to me this morning, because obviously there's a lot of journalists together here and stuff, the most prominent branding in the entire Trackhouse launch was Chevrolet, because they sponsored the NASCAR team and it was done in the NASCAR workshop.
Right,
so
yeah.
It just felt missing. I've worked with teams big and small, and I've seen small teams put a big effort on because they know that you go to your job interview dressed for the job you want, not the job you have. You know that thing?
I know. I've never put it in practice, but I do know it. Yeah.
But it's wearing a suit to a job interview. They turned up in sweatpants.
Fair enough. Well, let's do something nicer. I remember we were talking about Ayagura coming out of last season as a potential PR problem because he's just he was didn't speak much, didn't really convey much, was maybe an uneasy fit with an outwardly extremely media focused team. It came across really well these past couple of days. There's a really, and I know this doesn't surprise you because that's just how he is. There's a really exciting, outrageously chill energy about him. Not like stereotypically chill, but specifically like chill even by the standards of cultures that you would expect to be chiller than maybe yours and mine.
He's got an amazing, it comes across as I can only it's like a pleasant disdain for doing media.
Yeah.
It's like he quite openly hates it, and as a result, kind of lets you know that with his body language and his words. But you can't really feel like you don't really moan about it because he's quite honest about that's how he feels, and he's really not here for it. But a team with. It would be very easy for a team to lean into that and turn it into something really quite amusing, especially on social media. And I hope that, because that is one element the Trackhouse are good at, especially with their video content. I'm hoping that they really kind of lean into him as this guy who, Yamaha have done it really well in World Superbikes with, Andrea Locatelli is not on social media. And has made a real point of not being on social media. So every time they'd go to tag him, where they would tag him in a tweet, they tag it as #Locka not on Twitter. Yeah. You can lean into it a little bit as a team, and I kind of hope that they do something like that with Agura, because the kind of open disdain for talking to people is just it's great. I love it. He reminds me of working on road racing things with Michael Dunlop, and that same kind of just don't want to be here approach to it all.
And it didn't feel, because you can make that feel disrespectful, and it
really
wasn't.
That's the thing; it doesn't at all feel disrespectful, which is the bit that kind of makes it quite charming.
And there's a part of me that's obviously it would be very understandable if this is a language barrier thing, because English is hard, and if you're going. You're going to say something that might be a headline and you're not totally confident in the vocabulary, then you're going to try to keep it shorter. But they left us on the call for the Japanese part of it, and the Japanese answers were shorter, which is awesome.
No, exactly.
It's amazing. Final item then on the docket, Raul Fernandez. Because Matt isn't here, I get to talk about Raul Fernandez. I get to make him part of the item list. As part of that Zoom call, which was, again, we've been very mean occasionally. It was a very nice Zoom call. I really enjoyed it. I thought we got some great stuff out of it. I asked specifically Davide Brivio, the Trackhouse team boss, about sort of the mystery of Raul and why the Moto2 rookie that was so good that season hasn't shown it for any sustained period of time in MotoGP, and basically with the context of how can Trackhouse be so comfortable having given him a 2-year deal. So they're committed to him through to the end of this regulation cycle. How can they be comfortable feeling that we will definitely get more out of him? Is it something like on the mental side that they see a way of unlocking, etc.? Anyway, here's what Davide had to say, and it's quite an extensive interview, quite an extensive answer. So I appreciated that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a mainly mental thing. I mean, the rider is a package, no? It's like the motorcycle. You got the engine, the chassis, the electronic. The rider has the physical, as the mental, as let's say how approach rating, motivations and stuff like that. So from this point of view, I mean, I only work for one year with Raul. I think that he had a great Moto2 championship when he won 8 races, and he felt, of course, very strong. Then he went to MotoGP probably too early, and probably he was not. I feel he was not prepared to go to MotoGP. So then a difficult year in KTM, then moved to Aprilia with the old bike and whatever. So he had 2-3 seasons. He never had let's say, a quiet season or a stable season, which is what we're trying to build for the 2025, because it's the 3rd year in this team, but also if you look, the team at the end of 23 has changed. There are some difficulty changing from RNF to Trackhouse. So every year has been different for him, no? With something different. In this 25, we try to keep everything as stable as possible. Thinking also about last season, probably, I will say, of course, making a balance at the end of the year, probably it was not a great decision, or I'm not sure, but switch from 23 bikes to 24 bikes in the middle of the season probably was not, thinking now, maybe we could have done different, or we could have kept maybe the 23 just to avoid confusion or to avoid difficulty. So this is all this long story to say that this year it will start with the same team. he will start with the bike that he will carry for all the season, same bike as everybody else. So hopefully we're going to have a smoother situation, smoother start. And as I say, we looking at the challenges to use his full potential, because also, I mean, of course, there's no doubt that he's a talent, he's capable to win races, he's fast, but we have to put everything together to create the right package. Yes, and he's also changing the way of training during this winter, and so we expect him to be stronger physically. When you are stronger physically, you also strong mentally, motivated. Of course, having Martin Bezzecchi around is a motivation, there's no doubt. I mean, we cannot hide. It is a great benchmark. We can share information. We can see where we are. And as I say, to have a world champion is a benchmark. We can see where we are, as a rider, as a bike and everything. So, yeah, that's the challenge for the 25.
Simon, how optimistic do you feel about the Raul Fernandez situation? Because on the one hand, we're in Tier 4, the optimism runs out a little bit, I would say. On the other hand, it's Davide Brivio.
What was quite funny was that completely unprompted, Massimo Rivolo went off on the same, there's so much more potential from this boy that we have to find a way to unlock tangent, as Brivio did. There is still a ton of belief in Raul Fernandez within Aprilia, within Trackhouse. They still feel like they've just not got the best from him. And I think there's maybe a little bit of guilt that they're the ones that forced him to switch from a GP or from an RSGP 23 to 24 halfway through last season and basically reset him to zero. Mm-hmm. When, to be fair, in his credit, things were starting to look all right. He was fighting for podiums, fighting for race wins. Yeah, he was falling off doing it, but he was there. He was at the sharp end for the first time. And, I think they've got to be hoping that is going to come again this year with a more consistent season. And they've also got to be thinking, we've got to believe that they see stuff on the data that we don't get to see that suggests that there's more there as well, because they gave him a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
It would have been easy to give him a 1-year deal or a 1+1 deal and look at options for Moto2 or whatever, but they didn't. They chips on the table and did. So I'm going to at least give him the benefit of the doubt for another 6 months. Let's see where we are at the summer break.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's, a part of it is, this is such terrible audio content, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you're on social media, you will see the meme picture sometime of a guy mining for diamonds, and he stops, and it's like a view that shows that the diamonds were like one layer away, right? That's going to be Aprilia with Raul Fernandez right now, because we've all seen that Moto2 season. So we all feel the diamonds are there, and they're going to be there. And for a rider who does not have that in their background, we would not be talking about, just give him a clean run, just give him, a consistent season, because that doesn't get afforded to other riders. That doesn't get afforded to lesser talents. But time is not unlimited. I think the 2-year deal will do a lot of good, but this is the moment that tells us whether this is happening or whether it's never happening. And it's, for every rider in MotoGP, it is a possibility it's never happening.
It has to be statistically not going to happen for most of them. That's the nature of motorbike racing.
Well, that'll be us from us today. Got through it without the regular host. Almost didn't make a huge mess out of it. I don't know about that. Next up, Ducati. Matt should be back, so if there's going to be a Patreon plug, it's going to be a lot more sane. And again, Matt should be back. I have not disappeared him. See you guys next time.
The Athletic.
You know that feeling, the rush of holding a piece of sports history in your hand, how it connects us to our past and present like nothing else can. Catch the thrill when you shop the unrivaled selection at eBay, the home of collectibles since 1995. Premium trading card singles, live card breaks, unique game-used memorabilia. Collect with confidence by downloading the eBay app on the App Store or by going to ebay.com/theathletic. That's ebay.com/theathletic. Start building your collection today.
Hello, I'm Ian McIntosh and I'm the host of the Daily Football Briefing. What is the Daily Football Briefing? It's a special 10-minute daily show designed to bring you up to speed with the most important stories from across the football world. Except on Monday mornings when it's 15 minutes and we try to cram in the results, standings and stories from the top 10 leagues on the planet. Or at least the top 10 leagues that I run on a Football Manager save. Follow this show today and you'll never miss another big story again, whether it's news that The Athletic has just broken. David Ornstein, what happened? News from outside the Premier League that other podcasts might ignore.
That is a difficult one to explain, so let's go bit by bit.
Or it's Champions League week and you just need someone to put it all into context.
It's made for a very useful away point in a difficult game in a difficult week.
Listen to the Daily Football Briefing in 2025. It's out every weekday wherever you get your podcasts.